Good afternoon. My name is Jenny Lesser. I'm the Business Development Manager here at United Training. Welcome to today's Hacker Simulation Experience presented by Tim Rosenberg from EC Council. We are using the GoToWebinar platform today. We will record the session and we'll share a copy of that recording with you. We do encourage participation, so if you have any questions, go ahead and put them into the questions panel of our dashboard. United Training is very excited to present this webinar today, so please visit United Training to find upcoming EC Council classes, and I'll now hand it over to you.
Hey, hello everybody, this is Tim. Hope everyone's doing well today, staying safe. So we're going to talk about our hacker platform, hacker range management environment, all kinds of fun stuff. Just some quick warnings. We're using a test environment today because it's more fun to play with. So you're going to see a bunch of weird data, for example, but no worries. What I want to do though is before we get into the platform, I want to talk about this slide here. So a little bit about my background. Not much to tell, except I've been doing cybersecurity education, training, and wargaming since 1999. So I've been doing this for a little bit. Watched the industry evolve and change over the last couple decades. And before joining EC Council, I spent a couple years at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab doing stuff and things. And here we are today. So one of the things, my big bandwagon is this slide right here. And that is that cybersecurity is a skill, okay? And it's like any other skill, like driving a car is a great example. The trouble is, and I also understand that I work for a vendor in this capacity, is that we do not treat cybersecurity like a skill, okay? We treat it as some sort of bizarre, mystical, magical knowledge base where you pay lots of money to go into a closed hotel room conference center for a week, sign a bunch of NDAs, take a test issued by a third party that says, I can't disclose the contents of the test, but I'm allowed to do this work now. And when you think of it in those terms, that's a preposterous way of doing things. When you talk about any other skill out there, right? If you wish to go do Formula One racing, you don't go take a class for a week and take a test that you can't discuss the content on and get a certificate by a third party, and then go join a racing team because you have a piece of paper that says Tim's qualified to drive. That's just not how that works. It doesn't work for sports. It doesn't work for the military. It doesn't work for lots of things. And so a large piece about CyberQ, the platform we're going to show today, is about moving the industry towards treating cybersecurity like a skill and training and practicing as you would with a skill. So what you see here is the path from novice to operator, and it doesn't matter what the skill is, by the way. So we're going to walk you through this very briefly so that we're all using the same words to mean similar things. And we're going to use the Formula One driving as an example. And we're not going to go through slides and stuff. It's just, we're just going to have a little chit chat here amongst ourselves. So you wake up one day, you don't have a driver's license. You might be a teenager, you might not, it doesn't matter. You've never driven before, right? And you've decided you wish to go learn how to drive. Well, the first thing you have to do is acquire knowledge. That's that very first step, right? You can't sit behind a wheel, okay, until you understand the knowledge base required to drive, right? What's a turn signal, what's a brake, what's a gas, phrases such as right of way, right? You need to know what all of that vocabulary and taxonomy is. What's a clutch, what's a stick, a gear, reverse, drive, neutral, all of this stuff that you need to know, okay? And usually that's imparted via a lecture. Once you have a basis of the vocabulary, of the nomenclature, the taxonomy, the rules, okay, the next step up is practice, okay? You're gonna get into a car and you're gonna practice. You're gonna practice at night, you're gonna practice in day, you're gonna practice with passengers, big trucks, little cars, motorcycles, whatever it happens to be. The key thing about that practice is any of you that have kids that are either have gone through or are going through the driver's license process right now, is that you have to practice in lots of different circumstances, okay? At night, day, in the rain, in the snow, uphill, downhill, chased by wolves, whatever, okay? So that's the practice. That fundamental piece of practice is I'm going to repeat the same skill in different environments. That's how you build deep skill. And then you're going to go for your driver's test. Okay, very simple. Now, as you get your driver's license, great, congrats. You decide you love driving so much, you wish to become a Formula One racer. Okay, so you're going to keep going through the assessment process until you attain a skill required to be that level of a performer. Now, what's interesting is once you join the Formula One racing circuit, that next step is a team. You now need to be able to perform your skill within the context of a group of people working towards a common goal, okay? And that has its own knowledge, practice, and assessment methodology loop inside there as well, right? So now you're doing things as part of a team. You have a pit crew, a pit boss, a manager, sponsors. You have deadlines. It's now not just you on the practice, going around the track. You now are responsible for working with an entire team. Can you communicate? Can you know when there's problems, et cetera, et cetera? And then the last one is mission. It's race day, okay? It's race day. You go live, you get one shot, you win, you lose, you come in second, you're done. And then you go back to the drawing board, and then knowledge gained from the real world updates the process, and you lather, rinse, repeat until you decide to stop driving professionally, okay? This process is not how we treat cybersecurity. We pretty much hang out at the knowledge, kind of skip over the practice part, goof off in the assessment a little bit, and ignore team and mission. What's interesting about this journey from the bottom left to the top right is, again, using the driving analogy, is it's still driving, right? The cars that you drive for Formula One follow the same rules of physics that you practice. We all had that first beater car, right? It's the same, it's still the same road, 4 wheels, steering column, gears, right? What differs as you move up this, what changes as you move up these steps are some basic fundamental principles relating to what is the tolerance for failure, right? Down here at the knowledge end, if you fail, you just go back and study the test again, right? So the tolerance for failure is very high. The consequence for failure is very low. Over here on the mission side, right, the complete opposite is true. Once you go live and you're on race day, the tolerance for failure is very low, and the consequence for failure is very high, okay? So even with just those two elements, the consequences of failure and the tolerances for failure, this is a very, things change as you move up the path. And so we're going to walk you through some of the aspects of CyberQ that shows you how you're able to start treating cybersecurity in a true skill set. The last thing that changes, by the way, before I forget, doom on me for not including this in the list, is metrics, okay? When you're down on the bottom with knowledge, your metrics are really around, multiple choice, tests, vocabulary, yes, no answers. Your metrics are very basic, they're very minimal, and they're very you-oriented. Do you know the answer to the question? Boop, we're done, okay? Likewise, the metrics for your assessment there to get your driver's license, very narrow. There's really only one or two, right? Can you drive around the block safely and follow the rules of the road, right? That's really it. Those are your only metrics, right? Now, as you cross into team and mission, your metrics get incredibly different. So when you look at a Formula One racer, for example, when you start doing this level of work for pay, for performance, your metrics dramatically get significantly larger because now you're going to start keeping records. Time of day, what did you eat, how much sleep did you have, heart rate, muscle twitch, altitude, performance of the vehicle, temperature, all of these other metrics. You look at a Formula One racing team, they have at least 100 some odd different data feeds coming in on race day to monitor every aspect, to tweak and dial in so that when you go live, you know exactly everything that you can know and make adjustments where necessary. So let's show you how this works in CyberQ. So real quick, I have a single player event playing here, just so that you understand the console of what this looks like from a player's perspective. This is just me playing a simple experience by myself. Pretty simple console. I'm on a 4K monitor, so you may need to use the GoToWebinar's zoom in features, or I can zoom in. It will kind of mess things up a little bit visually, but that's okay. We can figure all that out. So this is me, pretty boring. Notice there's nothing here until I click start. And once I start, I have flags. I have a console that's unlocked. And this is me playing as red and blue. So this is a single person event, single player event, where I'm playing both offense and defense together. As you can see here, I have some blue information. I have 2 blue targets down here. And when I click on those, these are just headless Linux boxes that are downrange. This information on the left is going to change. And it's going to update some things, some passwords, some service scores, and some IP addressing information. So this is information I need from the blue perspective. And then red, I have my flags over here, and I can attack and destroy and do all sorts of crazy shenanigans. Even though the webinar title includes the word simulation, nothing here is simulated. This is all live. This is all real. This is no different than if you were sitting on a live environment doing stuff and or things against other live assets. This is an open EMR, electronic medical record system. There's 4,000 some odd patient records in here with social numbers, date of births, mailing addresses, the whole 9 yards. And you can actually see one of our flags over here on the right. I'll zoom in real quick. Is in fact, what is the social security number of a specific person inside the database? So we're just going to answer these incorrectly. See how many attempts I get. Oh, I get several attempts. We'll skip that then. And we'll just do, 1, 2, 3. Let's just kind of pop in here real quick, just for fun. Yep. And 1, 2, 3. We'll submit again and again, and we're done. Now, as soon as I click finish, this is going to tear down the entire environment and stop the shot clock, which you can see up here in the right. Boop. And so now we're just going to give this some feedback. Yep, great, thanks, and we're done. So that is a simple console. That's a single player event. The console is very similar for team-based events, for single player, single target, single player, multi-target, and full red versus blue events, live networks, et cetera, et cetera. So let's kind of show you some things about how all of this comes together. And one of the things I want to focus on is basically what you're seeing is not the interface reserved for EC Council. This is the interface that is open to anybody who wants this level of control. So CyberQ is kind of like a kitchen, right? You can walk in the kitchen and you can pull out a frozen meal from the freezer and pop it in the microwave and eat and go, right? 5 easy minutes. All you got to do is, time 5, start. You're done. And so that's consumption of someone else's content, right? That is what we just played. This was an event built by somebody else that I jumped in and said, oh, I want to play that. Great, cool, let's go. But the other thing that's cool about a kitchen is in the CyberQ world, it's a full-size commercial kitchen with every ingredient and appliance you could ever ask for. So on the other end of that, from as far away from the frozen meal as you can get, is this ability to create anything, really, okay? And the menu you see on the left is entirely role-based, which means if you're not ready, right, to jump in and do the full Emerald Lagasse commercial kitchen and cook stuff up yourself, we still have frozen meals, and you can actually go, there's a whole spectrum between the two end there that allows you to do all kinds of different things in terms of what you're ready as an organization to consume, build, or try. Okay, so I'm coming in the deep end here, but understand that you don't need to start or stay in the deep end, all right? So for us, the fundamental building block of anything inside of CyberQ is a target, okay? A target can be a virtual machine, it can be a file, it can be a latitude and longitude, a place in real space. It really doesn't matter to me what it is. But a target, in this case, the screen that we're on here, this is our targets for virtual machines, okay? So any VM. we're going to play with this VM today. Now, you can use our VMs for this process. You can also load your own VMs. So for people who have existing content, you don't lose it. You can actually push it up in here, or you can build all brand new content, right? So that's kind of important, because one of the things, when you look at this slide again, right? When you move up the ladder, up the stairs, usually knowledge is very broad and generic, okay? Because we don't know when you're just starting out where you're going to go, right? If you're just learning to drive, our story ended with a Formula One driver. What if you're going to be a truck driver, or a UPS delivery driver, or a school bus driver, or just a dad driving his kids to school, right? We don't know where you're going to end on that journey. So we're going to keep the knowledge as broad as possible, right? As you go up these steps and get closer and closer to your mission, your knowledge, your equipment, your practices, your techniques, your policies, your procedures become very, very specific, okay? So doing cybersecurity in a hospital is very different than doing cybersecurity in a bank, or a power grid, or a university, or as a student, or as a professor, or as a practitioner, or as a law enforcement professional. All of that is very different. And so why we care is because when you're building training environments, you need that freedom. I need that freedom to build targets that support people at this end, the knowledge base. And I need the ability to build targets for people at every stage, all the way up to mission. So a good example of that is, if you don't use Active Directory, well, then why would you be building this target, right? Or maybe you use LDAP on Linux and you want an LDAP server. Great, you can build that too. Maybe you're Palo Alto instead of Cisco, right? Maybe you are this versus that. Maybe you're MySQL versus Postgres. Okay, so all of that ability to start building those features out is really important, because then you can start building targets and experiences for people that support where they are on this journey and where you are on this journey in relationship to them. If you're a teacher, if you're a professor, for example, you're probably somewhere down here on these first 3 steps. If you're in corporate education or corporate training or preparing people for workforce deployment, you're probably closer to these top 3 steps up here, or somewhere along the path. So this information here, we're going to ask you a lot of information about this target so that we can present the right information to the right player at the right time, depending on your needs, not my needs. And you can see here, you know, there's the console username and password, right? There's the IP address, and then some costing information and whatnot. This is kind of fun. You can actually assign it into a domain as well. You can make it a bank server. Here's the different thing. Make it a banking server, medical. This is just a tag, which we'll come back to later and show you where that gets used. I'm going to ask you to describe what this asset's doing on the network, right? What services are running it. This is really important. Remember, we talked about, as you go up that chain, up those stairs, the metrics begin to change, right? The farther up you get the stairway, the more different metrics we need to be collecting. And so one of those metrics for us, because we do points, you see them here, we do points, but points are that's that race day end of the day, right? Did you win or did you lose? What place did you come in? That's really all points are good for, by the way. And it's upsetting, because that's what most people focus on, right? When you look at all the other platforms that are out there, points. I scored 6,000 points. So what? I don't care. It's meaningless, right? And the reason I know that points are meaningless and arbitrary beyond anything of telling people win, lose, or draw is because just look at professional sports. Let's see, a baseball run is worth 1. A football touchdown is worth 6, and a basketball hoop is worth 2, but sometimes 3 and sometimes 1. They're completely arbitrary, and they don't specify. One is not translatable to the other, nor can you use, as you know, since a football touchdown is 6, does that mean it is 6 times more difficult than a baseball run? No, it's completely arbitrary. So points are useful, they have a purpose, but they're a terrible place to end, right? So this is where we start giving you additional metrics. So we're going to check these services, by the way, to see if they're actually running. Because now as an attacker or as a defender, as red versus blue, I can start not just describing, did you accomplish your task, but what was your impact on the network, right? It's kind of important. So I'll just delete that. And lots of different services. Speaking of tasks, we talked about flags, by the way. And flags for us, let's just add a new flag down here. There's a password flag, perfect. A flag for us is any task that, any question I can ask you that in order to answer it, you have to do something, right? So in this case, we're asking you what the clear text password is of something. And notice here, they've mapped this in correctly. We're gonna map this to system hacking and password cracking. So this is where things get interesting. So flags, just a generic, I ask you a question, in order to answer it, you must do something. I can give it to red players, I can give it to blue players, okay? I can create very focused flags. I can come down here and create wide open flags, right? What is the airspeed of a Piper Cub, right? It doesn't matter, you can type whatever you want, it doesn't matter to me, okay? But I'm gonna ask you to do a couple things with this flag. One, I'm gonna ask you to map it to a course. That course has modules, lots of modules there. And those modules have tasks. It's a 3-tier hierarchy. Now you'll notice that we're mapping this to the CEH, Certified Ethical Hacker, version 10 content. You can map this to any course module task hierarchy you want. You can use ours, you can use yours, you can make up a whole brand new one. It doesn't matter to me, okay? You can also map this to the NIST-NICE framework, right? So there's the job skills inside of NIST-NICE. Now, why we care, right, is because if you remember a couple of things, the practice, I want to practice basic skills, tasks, right, in different environments. So this is where you start mapping this out. So I can have 200 different password cracking labs, 200 different password cracking exercises, because this is where we start mapping out the individual tasks that are represented by these flags. All right, so it's going to allow us to start creating some very deep skill paths inside the environment, red and blue. And also, we talked about the consequence for failure. Also, when you look at educational paths and skill paths, part of that consequence for failure being so low down here means we get things like hints, we get different attempts, all kinds of fun things, all of which are manageable in here, right? So as you move through this process, you can do the same thing with injects. You can add player documentation and additional difficulty rating information as well. So this is where we start mapping all of this metadata about a target. And you can put as many flags, as many services, different documentation, as much as you like on this target, all right? Neat thing about the docs is we have 3 different levels of documentation: lab guide, learning guide, and walkthrough. Because again, if you're going to use this target for different purposes, the documentation required down here on knowledge is different than a practice, is different than assessment, is different. So we're going to allow you to create lots of different documents for one thing. Now, your fundamental building block is done. Time to use it. And this is the event we were just playing. So now it gets interesting, because now we start designing, okay, we have this fundamental building block, right? So now let's go ahead and figure out what to do with it. How do we want to use this target, or targets plural? So let's have some fun. We're going to use this for a couple of things. I'm going to give you lots of options, again, to support wherever you are on this stairway, right? So let's say you're building an environment and you're down closer to the knowledge level. I'm going to give you unlimited attempts to answer a flag correctly, right? Because that's where you get high tolerance for failure with low consequence. If you're going to build this experience and it's more of a practice, well, let's kind of turn the heat up a little bit. You get 5 attempts. If this is assessment or mission prep, you get 1 shot at it. So just by changing that one metric right there, that one setting, allows you to start building content along a verifiable skill path, right? I can talk about how many points, if this is a team-based event, for example, how many points people get. Because if this is a team-based event, then you're going to have lots of people trying to get this flag. So maybe if it's a practice event, everybody gets 100% of the points. But maybe we want to turn the heat up a little bit. First person gets 100% of the points, everybody else gets 0. I'm still going to log that you captured the flag, right? But at this point, you're not going to get any points for it. Remember, points are useful for determining winners and losers, but it's also a very powerful reward mechanism. We're going to talk about intervals. This is how often am I going to check those network services you configured on your targets. If this is practice, I mean, a 15-minute outage in the real life is very painful, right? If this is more of an assessment or something more critical we wish to test, I'm going to check every 5 minutes. This display target consoles, this is what we were playing with before, where you saw that I had both red and blue on one display or console. If I just want to play with red, I'm just going to give you just the red console, right? This is going to give you red and blue. So just some basic settings. Now, we talked about those deep skills, right? About that practice, about practicing the same skill in different circumstances, different environments. And here's how we manage this, okay? So this first page that we were just on, this is where we set up kind of the shell, right? We know that this is going to be more of an assessment base because we have one attempt. We know the point spread is going to be pretty malicious, and I'm not going to give you blue consoles. You're going to go in this as an attacker, for example, and you're going to go in blind, okay? So now the next question is, how do I choose those targets that are downrange for the player? Well, there's 3 different ways to choose them. Right here, I'm choosing them based on the course, and there's my modules, and then there's my tasks, okay? So now you can see I have, for example, I have 2 password cracking. I have the task listed twice because I have 2 different targets, okay? So what happens now is I can create, let's just say I'm really hyper-focused on password cracking. I can create 15 different password cracking labs, each one a little bit different, right? Because password cracking is not one skill, right? It is brute force, it is permutations, it is rainbow tables, it is default passwords. There's a whole bunch of different ways to conduct password cracking. And so this is where we can start building things based on those skills. I'm going to focus on the skill, not the points, right? And choose my targets appropriately. I could take all 50, if I have 15 different targets, each with different passwords or password cracking labs, I can put them all in one. It doesn't matter to me. I can do it however I like. This is where when you start looking at evaluating other people's platforms, including ours, when people say, oh, we have 500 labs, well, cool, that's a great number. 500 is a big number. My question for you to ask the vendor is that 500 labs where I practice one skill 500 times? That's pretty cool. Or is it 500 different skills that I practice once? Because those are 2 very different educational models. And by practice more than once, what I mean is not repeating the same lab with the same question and the same answer. That's not deep skills acquisition or practicing, that's memorizing the correct answer, right? This system here allows me to do exactly that, deep skills acquisition. If I have 100 different labs and 10 of those are password cracking, different types of password cracking, that means you have 10 different ways to learn how to crack passwords. So that is a very important way to evaluate people's platforms, especially where you are locked into their content, right? Here you can add whatever content you want, doesn't matter to me. But when you start looking at other people's platforms where you are connected and dialed and reliant upon their content and their content only, it's a very important question to ask. But maybe you say, I'm not an educator. Maybe I'm more job skills focused. I'm looking at that. Well, then I can do the exact same mapping based on the this nice category. Right? If you remember, when we built the flags, we mapped them to a course and we mapped them to this nice. So this allows you to come at this exact same end result. I'm going to build an experience for people to play based on the workflow that you are most important, that you are most interested in, right? So if you want to focus on job skills, then you can come at these targets from a job skills perspective. If you are focused more on course watching, you're going to focus on it from this direction. Even if that's a corporate course, if you have your own internal training program as a corporation, you can come at it from this direction as well. Or if you remember, when we built the target, we also assigned it an industry. So maybe you don't really care about either one of those. You're not really interested, for this experience anyway, about nice or course mapping. You just want a really good scenario and a well-built network. Well, then we're just going to come here and say, okay, well, give me all the targets that support the hospital or the bank or the whatever, okay? And then we can actually even go even deeper and build out red and gray assets to create a very rich environment for people to play in, right? So we support very simple one target downrange. You get a Kali box or a Windows attack box, you get one target and off to the races you go. Those are really great for knowledge, for puzzles, for pickup games, or practicing some basic fundamental skills on your own. But we also allow you to start building out very complex networks with firewalls, with upstream and downstream assets, red team assets, blue team assets, very interesting environments. And this is where all of this stuff, we can do a much deeper tech dive on a later date. So let's go back. I don't want to save this. I'm going to come back and come back in real quick, because we're then going to show you the fun part about flags, and then we'll pretty much open this up for questions. So notice we only have 2 flags. We can reorder them as we like, or I can remove them, okay? So this is where things get really powerful again. So when you start looking at content, one of the things that has come to haunt me over the many years of doing this is you build this really amazing environment, and it takes a lot of effort to build targets, to build content, to build flags, but then you're done. And now you have to do it all over again. Like, the level of effort never goes down. What you see here with just, again, a couple of clicks and some drags is it allows me to build one target with a whole bunch of different flags. And we've already narrowed those flags down to just the 2 that support the tasks I'm looking for. And I can even get more specific and go, oh, you know what? I don't even need to worry about the SOC number, right? Or I do. Or I want to put them in order because I want to drive my players. Once I do one flag at a time, I want to drive my players step by step by step, right? I'm going to ask you the first flag, recon, next flag, network mapping, next flag, vuln mapping, whatever it happens to be. You can reorder these to equate to whatever process you are looking to teach, practice, or assess, okay? I can make it open. I can give you all the flags at once and you can just, okay, figure it out, off to the races. I can give you one at a time. I can go even one step further and say, okay, now we're going to do more of an assessment base, and whatever the timer is on each of these flags, in this case, 15 and 25 minutes, you're done. That's all you're going to get. So again, you're talking about those settings that adjust the consequence and tolerance for failure upon this journey, okay? And then you do the same thing for injects and docs, and then you're done. Once you're done, you can play it. You're good to go. You can play this as an individual event. You can play this as a team event. You can play it as a red versus blue. The last fun thing here is not only do we do all of this content management, we also manage, we keep all of our players in organizational buckets. So we have orgs. Let me just scroll down here. It's better this way. Nice pretty tree. We have an org. Orgs have groups. Groups have teams. Okay, you can actually build teams, you can add rosters and roles that match whatever it is you happen to be working on that day, either as an educator or a corporation. And then this whole process here of event management is the whole kitty. This is where you set your events. It's a team-based event. We have different formats. we manage invitations, we manage RSVPs, and then we manage all of the range and scoring as well. And so this is CyberQ is equal parts user management, org management, content management, range management, event management, and scoring. And the last fun part about scoring, I don't know if we have any data for this player yet. Let's take a quick look. We don't. This player's not completed anything, but we start actually tracking their ability to, we take all of the tasks in each of these modules, for example, that's been assigned to me, and we can actually chart your progress through all of this content as well. So there's lots of different ways. Of course, we can then report. If we come back here and see if there's any data for me under past events. See if I have any results. You can see my flags. You can see that I skipped them, right? I did not answer anything, and so therefore have 0 score. But then we also can map it, and there's your NIST mapping, and as well as your course module task mapping as well. So what's nice about this is that the whole goal here is to create a persistent player profile over time. When you look at only points as your single metric, right? It's a binary assessment. Did you do it or did you not? You come back to that same lab report a month from now and say, I got 55 points out of 55. What does that even mean? Because we're mapping everything back within inside of frameworks, I can actually point you back to where you either need to go to remediate your knowledge gaps, or I can tell you how prepared you are for the next job. So lots of different ways to tackle this. We haven't even touched exams and other metrics and XAPI, but I don't want to sit here and keep lecturing forever. So I'm going to stop here and open the floor for some questions.
Thank you so much, Tim. That was a ton of great information and very cool. If you guys do have questions, please type them into the questions panel. We'll give that a little bit of time here, but that was very interesting.
I'm not sure I see the questions panel. I see the chat.
Yeah, you'll see them come into the chat. Yep.
Okay.
So I know we had some attentive people here today. And we will definitely follow up this this event with an email with a copy of the recording, and then we'll share some upcoming EC Council classes with you to take and learn more. And yep, we'll give it just a little bit longer, but I don't see any other questions coming in. All right, so there's one. Somebody asked if you have a team of users playing, can a manager or somebody oversee somebody's skills report and how their employee is doing?
Yes, so we compartmentalize everything on the 3 tiers, or so there's basically an org leader, a group leader, and a team leader. So you can see whatever, if you are the team leader, you can see all the reports for your teammates or your teams, excuse me. Of course, as an individual, you can see yours. And then, of course, as a group, you can see down into your teams, and as an org leader, you can see the whole thing. So one of the things we're working on right now is this is the test environment. As production gets more full with data, what happens is we now are working on what all those reports look like, as we now have a metric ton of data. And also, one of the fun things is we can speak much later, but everything I showed you here today, plus there's a whole analytics backend. Everything we do is actually API enabled. So all the stuff that you see here today, if you don't like the color, the look, the workflow, the whatever, it's all manageable. Like the platform is designed to be open so that if what we have built doesn't meet your needs or your flow, we can change it. Likewise with all of our data, if the reports that we've generated don't fit your bill, all the data is available to you and your org via XAPI, and you can create your own reports as well.
Very cool.
Thanks.
Yep, and we at United Training love that identifying the skills gap and where you can suggest what training to use. So,
So
um,
one of the things this was designed to solve, by the way, thank you for, I'm just going to totally hijack that comment.
sure.
Having done this as we all have for, you're in this business for more than 6 weeks, you realize that there's just such a huge shortage of qualified people. And a large piece of that is because we don't have a pipeline. There is no standard way to go through this environment. So we did a fair amount of research, and when you look at something like the NCAA, has a workflow, a pipeline that identifies athletes at the high school level, right? Then you register for an NCAA profile when you're a junior in high school, and there's a process of going from high school to, top tier college athletics to pro. We know what that process looks like, and a large piece of this environment that we see in CyberQ is designed to help you with that workflow. You can actually, depending on where you are from that high school to college to pro league, right? You can actually, let's just say it doesn't matter who you are. You could actually run an event at the high school level to find qualified people for certification programs, associate's degrees, and 4-year college degrees. You can run college level events for finding people to hire afterwards. So the whole idea here on CyberQ is this doesn't come in, establish, play one game and leave. We really do want people in here for a long period of time to allow people to find qualified applicants, qualified personnel, and move them through the process as quickly as possible, rather than waiting until they're a senior in college going, well, maybe we should hire this person.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, well, no other questions have popped in, so we will give you guys a little bit of time back for your afternoon. And again, thank you so much for that awesome information, Tim.
Thanks. Thank you all
And
very
you guys
much.
have a great day.
All right. Take care, everybody. Be safe out there.